Start today by first saying thanks to Janice for the kind invitation. This has been, I think this is the second or third time I've done this over the years. Obviously, we've had a little bit of a hiatus. My assumption is because of COVID. And so it's nice to see each of you here this morning. I'd also be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the work that you do. You know, my wife is an educator. She's a 6th grade teacher in Atwater, and very proud of her, to say the least. And I know firsthand the stress that educators and those who are in instruction have been facing the past couple of years. So I wanted to acknowledge each of you for the work that you each do every single day. I'm a school board member as well, and so in Atwater, and so that's been been doing that for about 7 or 8 years now. And again, so I've got different points of view. You know, I hear a lot at home, as you can probably well imagine, and so I know that each of you have had to endure a lot, and just know that the community very much appreciates you. And it's certainly nice to see friendly faces that I've known for a long time, and it's a privilege to be here. Today I'm going to be hopefully giving you some fun stuff to kind of think about as to projects that we've been undertaking for a little while, and kind of in some cases show each of you some videos that, to be honest, very few have seen. Some projects that we've undertaken. Now, I've got the best technical people in the world next to me, so we kind of did a quick practice round, and some of the slides I have to go forward and back to make it work, so just kind of bear with me. But I'm going to be speaking today primarily about a couple different cornerstone projects. And, you know, again, this is I think about what I want to accomplish today. Really, again, kind of 3 primary goals. One, I want to provide each of you with a 30,000-foot overview of what's in your backyard with regard to Castle. Many of you are pretty well aware of Castle, its history, and I'll go through some of that today. Certainly want to talk about where where we've been, but also, more importantly, where we're going. Then, obviously, I want to talk about what we're doing to actually drive innovation prospectively. I'm going to try to do all this in about a half an hour. So, again, as an aside, Castle Air Force Base closed in 1995. That was I grew up here. My dad was stationed here. I was stationed here. I was stationed here at the same time as my dad. So now to be overseeing Castle all these years later and its redevelopment, it's kind of a unique opportunity for me, especially as my oldest son is now in the Air Force as well. So I'm kind of proud of that. And Castle's got obviously a great history and story here in this community. But what was interesting is Castle closed in 1995, but we didn't assume ownership of the property until 2006. And so there was a period in between there that the community tried to figure out what it wanted it to become. It's also got, we're going to speak about, again, 2 cornerstone projects today, auto tech and kind of, if nothing else, logistics. Put this in perspective, we've got 75 tenants today on site. A lot of people don't realize that, but we've got a lot of activity. Castle is, in government terms, is what they're referred to as an enterprise fund. So I'm outside of the county's general fund. Every revenue that I generate on Castle, or every expense rather, is offset by a revenue that I generate from Castle. I have not taken a penny of general fund subsidy in about 14, 15 years. So we are pretty proud of that. That took us a little time to get there, but again, that's the result of a lot of private sector ingenuity, innovation, and kind of creative thought, because what we're dealing with out of Castle is, in many cases, a number of buildings that don't really have a whole lot of usefulness. It's kind of weird to say that. What's our vacancy rate? Less than 3%. How do you get there when you have all these empty buildings? Well, the reality is when the Air Force built things back from the 40s through about the mid-80s, they didn't have to build things to modern building codes. They didn't have to think about ADA. So it's not uncommon out there to have men's-only restrooms and 3.5-foot hallways, asbestos, lead-based paint, which is in some cases the only thing holding up buildings. So it's we're doing some work on that. Matter of fact, we've got some buildings that are actually being demolished as we speak today. So again, how do we compete? And so when you think about site selection, how do businesses think about where they're going to go or grow? Site selection is really about trying to eliminate communities from consideration. It's kind of weird to say that. Their job is to figure out all the reasons why to not come to Merced. That's what they do. They have clients, and they're trying to provide their clients with the best options possible. So what do we know? What are our strengths? We've got some proximity, in particular to the Silicon Valley. We're geographically dead center of the state. We've got north-south arterials, meaning both Highway 99 and I-5 that run through our county. we're by and large cheaper to do business here than it would be in a larger urbanized community like a San Francisco or Los Angeles. Now there was an article in yesterday's, I think it was yesterday's Sun Star that talked about, and actually, matter of fact, it was actually on ABC 30, I think it's been picked up in the Sun Star about we are now one of the top 15 most unaffordable areas in the country. That's a challenge. That's going to be something we need to think about, because what's taken place is the property values here at Merced County have skyrocketed while wages have remained stagnant. But comparatively, if somebody has a choice between doing business here or doing business in San Francisco, if cost was a factor, they're going to come here. And we're seeing more and more of that, especially as it relates again to logistics and auto tech. But again, one thing I would really highlight here is that, by and large, each of our 6 cities in the county of Merced have pretty favorable and friendly public sector partners. So again, thinking about site selection, again, trying to get people to want to come here, we needed to reverse engineer the economic development process, right? We needed to figure out what areas are we going to be most competitive in trying to attract industry to this region. Now, we all can probably, the first one's pretty easy, right? Ag. We're the breadbasket that feeds the world, so we know that ag processing is probably going to be something that we're going to score pretty high on. But there are other industries as well, a couple of which I'll talk about. Medical supplies, obviously we've got some industrial machinery, commercial space systems. I'm not going to highlight this today, but most people don't realize we have a rocket testing company on Castle that used to test out of Mojave that now do that on site. So obviously as you're connecting dots between science, math, and engineering and whatnot, they're actually testing rockets for the purposes of deploying satellites prospectively. So that's actually taking place in your backyard. Specialty chemicals, we're not talking about belching smokestacks. What we are talking about are like perfumes, things that have different additives. Pharmaceuticals, not necessarily the pharmaceutical itself, but the things that actually bind the agents to make pills what they are. That's an area that we could find some success. Regional distribution, one thing that we need to be very mindful of is we are sandwiched between 2 larger consumption markets, right? Fresno and Stockton. So we're about geographically right in between the 2. So from a distribution standpoint, we don't have the population here to support those markets because they're larger markets. That's the way that distribution works, but we can do some limited regional distribution. And this is where we have to go back a couple times. Okay, so autonomous vehicles. Now this is an area we found a little bit of luck. About 7 or 8 years ago, I get a phone call from then Google, and they say, hey, we're looking for a place to do some testing. We were off the beaten path. Bay Area was congested. They were looking for kind of a secret location where they could do what they needed to do. And that ultimately led to a 60-acre lease, which expanded to 90 acres, which now is 115 acres. They have about 100 people out there working. They test almost 24/7, 365 days a year, hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of miles tested annually. So it's kind of interesting. Now, it was fairly secretive until which time there was an Atlantic magazine article that came out that Google was amenable to participating in. And that article started talking about what they were doing here in Merced County. So if nothing else, the secret was out, and that led to other industry partners saying, hey, can we test here too? Now Google's a little bit different. They're entirely proprietary. They only allow Waymo, which is a subsidiary of Google, to actually test their own vehicles for their own purposes. So it's vehicles that someday maybe we'll drive, but it's also big rig trucks as well. That type of stuff is taking place right in our backyard. So they've got this footprint. They completely developed a brand new road system. They've got mock highways, weather tunnels, again, railroad crossings, roundabouts, anything that you can think of that could test and stress these vehicles is on site. Now, again, going back to the other point, which is, some other industry folks start showing up. Well, they wanted to test here for the same exact reasons. Too few testing and proving grounds in the western United States, and the ones that were here were very difficult to get into. The Bay Area, there's a site over in outside of Concord that is very difficult for people to schedule time. So we saw that as a niche opportunity. The data that I talked about, the market analysis in the previous slide, suggested, hey, we were going to be a kind of a niche opportunity for no other reason proximity to the Silicon Valley where this technology is being developed and born, right? So we started kind of going down that path, and we're going to show you some stuff here in a second. The second area is, most people don't realize this either, is the county of Merced owns the rail line that comes into Castle off the BNSF main line. About 6,500 feet of line. We've got 11,802 foot long runway, depending upon who you believe, about the 4th or 5th longest in the western United States. Weight bearing capacity of 1 million pounds, which makes it actually in excess of SFO. So we can do some things from a multimodal standpoint that people can't. Now there's also another component to that, which is the future Atwater-Merced Expressway. Now many of you actually take the Atwater-Merced Expressway exit today, and you actually dead end at right around Green Sands and Atwater. At some point, that road is going to be all extended all the way to Castle. Now why is that important? Well, a handful of reasons. When Castle was built in 1941 as an Army Air Corps base, the Air Force wasn't created yet, nobody contemplated it being anything other than a military installation. What do you have today? You got Buhat Colony High School, you got how many neighborhoods between Highway 99 and Castle, 7 stoplights, and rail cars that get stuck at Santa Fe and the entry to Castle every single day. So when you start thinking about sensitive receptors, you start thinking about air quality, you start thinking about, if nothing else, just proximity to schools, not really an advantageous way to get things in and out if we want to become a logistics facility, which of course Castle has the capacity to do. So the Atwater-Merced Expressway is a project that's going to, again, connect Highway 99 with Castle. Speaking about auto tech, now our board came up with several goals as it relates to auto tech. Now we wanted to obviously generate some economic activity. We also wanted to transfer those responsibilities. Government should not be in the business of trying to run typically what would be historically private operations. We wanted to find the right partner. We wanted to actually, obviously, have that partner invest some capital. We also wanted to integrate this effort with the inland port concept I just indirectly spoke about. We wanted to produce some cash for the county. And then we also wanted to develop partnerships with other folks in the community, whether they be obviously UC Merced, Merced College, local schools, right? So that's all kind of fun stuff. So that led us to a path, and that path was, how do we find the right partner? So the county went to KPMG, which is a fairly large consulting firm, and we said, help us develop a procurement process that's going to help bring the best proving ground operator possible to Merced County. We ended up getting interest from Asia, from Germany, from Spain, and we had one North American proving ground operator, which happened to be Transportation Research Center, which is affiliated with Ohio State University. So they've been operating for quite some time. That's almost now closer to 50 years at this point. They've got 1,000 existing clients that range from Ford to Ferrari. They've been in business a long time. They operate the largest proving ground in North America, a 4,500 acre site in East Liberty, Ohio. Now, what they knew inherently is that a lot of their users were actually having to transport vehicles and people from California, the Silicon Valley, to Ohio. They said, what can we do to kind of change that paradigm? So they said, let's build something at Castle. Okay, so again, what we wanted to do is we wanted to take advantage of some existing space and the asset itself. A 225 acre site that we could treat as a blank slate. Now this industry is moving fast, right? So just put it in perspective, going back to Waymo for a second, they built roads and all that stuff I've talked about earlier. They deconstructed that and built it again. And why? Because the industry is changing that rapidly. So TRC is actually in the business of multiple users, and so they've got to create an environment that's going to help people who manufacture vehicles, but also the sensors that go in the vehicles. Those things are going to help those vehicles react to the world. Red ball goes across the street, that vehicle has to know to slow down. Kid walks across the street or is on a bicycle, the vehicle has to know to slow down. Those are things that are being tested right now as we speak. So they wanted to create something that was flexible, something that industry partners from a wide array of companies would be able to leverage. Now this is a video that I don't think anybody else has actually probably ever seen. This is what we built. So before we press play, if you can put on pause for a second, this is what we built. So this is an area that was developed at really the north end of what used to be on our airfield. That's a 2¼ mile high-speed oval track. And you're going to see this through the video. It's about a couple minutes long. It's not too bad. But this was the result of a $6.5 million grant that the county secured, 0 local taxpayer exposure, thanks to Assembly Member Adam Gray. So we started working with him a couple years on this, and we were able to build something that now TRC operates that consists of a high-speed oval. You've got a road system internally. You've got 2 vehicle dynamic areas, which are kind of flexible testing environments. Again, they can set up tests and operations to meet somebody's needs for that day. Okay, go ahead and shoot. Brand new road, completely from scratch. Again, just taking advantage of an asset that was grossly underutilized, trying to bring new opportunities. You've got a road system, intersections, stoplights that they can move around depending upon their users' needs. You've got areas here where you can merge, practice merging, trying to get vehicles to react to other vehicles. So here's a traditional streetscape, right? But you can actually get that as a long straightaway. It's where you can merge on and off all the things that these vehicles, these companies need in order to perfect their vehicles. So this is about innovation. This is an area that can be set up in a number of different ways. It's flexible. Everything from cones to, to paint. This was a pretty significant undertaking. When the Air Force built things, that pavement was pretty thick. And so to grind that out and actually build anew, it was an impressive feat. Did that project, the oval, about 5 or 6 months total. Every single day there is a company out there. The coolest thing I've seen is the Tesla truck has tested out there quite a bit. But again, you're talking about everything from OEMs or manufacturers of vehicles to people who manufacture parts that go in those vehicles to the sensors that allow the vehicle to see. Again, it's parallel to our existing runway over there to the right. It's again just shy of 12,000 feet long. Just quick fact, for those that don't know, that was an alternate space shuttle landing site back in the 80s. Never happened. It's landed several presidents, most recent of which was President Obama prior to his departing office. That was actually a fun project to work on. So that is TRC California. They've got TRC in Ohio. This is the newest proving ground in California today. That's in your backyard. And if you guys are ever interested, as an aside, give me a holler and I'll see if I can get you a tour. That'd be kind of fun. Okay, okay, we gotta get one more slide ahead of that one. Okay. So, I don't want you to have to watch that video again. It's fun, but not that fun. Okay, so the other, shifting gears now, no pun intended, to rail and to logistics. I think we're all very well aware that right now there's probably about 60 boats off the coast of Los Angeles trying to get things in and out. The Port of Los Angeles is the busiest seaport in North America. They've got about 33,000 trucks per day that go in and out of the Port of Los Angeles. Now, much of that is coming obviously from the north going south, trying to get things out primarily to the Asian market. That's the way it kind of works. The Port of Long Beach and the Port of Los Angeles complex is the largest combined complex in the Western Hemisphere. And so you put that in perspective, just in terms of sheer numbers, every single congressional district in the country has product that is actually sourced through the Port of Los Angeles. Now, why is that important for us? Well, we've got growers here, agricultural producers, that everything from tomatoes to, obviously almonds, which is another big market for us here locally, that needs enhanced shipping opportunities to get things out more cost effectively. The Port of Oakland historically has not really worked for them. They've got trucks that will be parked for days trying to get in and out of the port. So we started coming up with an idea back in 2013. I started working on this, which is what can we do to actually leverage our rail asset, bring trucks to Castle, and then get something on rail and obviously from Castle to a port. Now, why is that important? There's a number of things which we're going to cover in subsequent slides. But in great part, obviously you get more on rail, not going through the valley. Well, now all of a sudden you're improving air quality. You're reducing congestion and impact on roads. So back in February of this year, we entered into an agreement with Patriot Rail. Patriot Rail is a company that operates in 16 different states, rail facilities. The closest to us is actually at McClellan up in Sacramento, which is ironically a former military installation as well. So they're actually now responsible for all operations, maintenance of our track, and now we're working with them on the development of what will be a 70-acre-ish rail district. Actually, I had a meeting with them this morning. They're actually, as a part of that, just put this in perspective, if you recall, I talked about trying to bring investment to this area. They've already undertaken a $1.2 million investment actually in expanding existing service lines on Castle. So the way it kind of works is BNSF brings things to Castle, Patriot gets things to the end user. And should be a slide. So this is the rail district. So this is really all focused at the southern end of Castle. So again, that's about 70 acres. The line in red is what's existing today. That's about 6,500 feet. Everything in green is going to be the new lines that's going to be added. The buildings to the south don't exist today, but they will. Those are buildings that will be able to house up to about 500,000 square feet roughly each. And that's going to allow us to bring things in and out, move things more effectively. Again, putting Merced County into a position where we're a part of the supply chain solution. And helping the Port of Los Angeles and other ports, not just them, get things in and out quickly. Again, putting our agricultural shippers in particular in a position to do things more cost effectively. So if you think about the tomato processors on the west side of Merced County, we've got the number 1, 2, and 4 tomato processors in the world in Merced County. We've got the number 1 dairy producing facility in the world in Merced County. E&J Gallo's winery in Merced County is their largest. Most people don't know that. Those are things that can be shipped via rail all over the world. So this is the first locomotive that was actually sited, and you can actually see that today out of Castle. That was actually delivered about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. Our railroad is now coined the Merced County Central Valley Railroad. And one thing that we wanted to do, just because of our connection to the past and our affection for veterans in particular, and obviously the heritage at Castle, is it's actually painted in blue. It's got each of the services actually painted on the train. So you are more than welcome to go out there and take a look. It should be parked out in front, and they are actually operational now as of May 1st. Okay, I'm so glad you're here. It's nice to have somebody who knows what the heck he's doing. So, again, for us, we have to be thinking about what are our keys for success. Again, by virtue of where we fit in the world, dead center of the state of California, we want to do things that's a little bit more effective from a cost perspective, from a timeliness perspective. Business can't wait they need predictability, right? They need to know when their product is going to get to market, and we want to be a part of that. So we want to take advantage of our location, but we need to spend a lot of time right now to build the sufficient volume to actually make it economical for BNSF to move things about 400-ish miles from here to the Port of LA. And we believe the ag business is going to support that significantly. So in closing, I think there's kind of 3 quick points for each of you. And this is where I kind of try to bring it back full, kind of to center. Where we need help, and whether you know it or not, each of you are part of the economic development process. You each are helping prepare kids for the jobs of tomorrow. This is where those who are in the economic development business who recognize that education is kind of part and parcel to that, I think those communities have found greater success. So we want you to help prepare those students for those high-tech jobs, those jobs that obviously are going to be a part of logistics solutions. We want you to be a part of that innovation process. We also want you to keep being mindful that you are also very much a part of the workforce development process as well. It's not just economic development, it's also workforce development. How do we, again, prepare our kids, prepare our workforce to meet those economic development goals and agendas later. And then again, what I would really encourage each of you is, in order to support that innovation, we have to think big. You have to come up with ideas, programs, so as to prepare these students for those jobs of tomorrow. Now I'm going to stop talking. Hopefully you can have a few questions for me. You can play Stump the Dummy if you would like. I'd be more than happy to do my best. Pretty good at that. But I would just say I am absolutely privileged to be here. We're very excited about what we're doing. One thing that the county doesn't do very well is we don't tell our story very well. We have been known for too long for all the wrong things, right? High unemployment, low wages, maybe crime. But those things need not define who we are as a community. We've got some of the best public schools, I would argue, anywhere. We've got some of the best private schools anywhere. I think we've got a community who is very humble, that again does not tell our story very effectively. In a perfect world, what I would ask from each of you is to help tell our story. Let people know that, hey, there are some pretty cool things happening in our backyards, getting our kids prepared for those type of jobs in the future. I want you to be a big part of that. I'll just close with this, and I kind of said it a little bit ago. If any of you are ever interested in kind of a good nickel tour, give me a holler. If I can get good, probably 5 to 7 people at a time, it just makes it a little bit easier for me. My staff or I will give you the best nickel tour we can. In the end, this is your asset. You guys are the taxpayers, and we're very mindful of that. We in the public sector are only here because our taxpayer extends us their resources from which to play. That's it. We don't create jobs. Government does not create a single job. Anybody that tells you otherwise, I think it's typically a politician who is trying to get a vote. The reality is this, government can very much be in the business of facilitating an environment in which the private sector can find success. And I'll close there. I'd be happy to answer any questions. So thank you.